My name is Stanfield Michelo. I am a regional expert and freelance consultant. At this stage, you are already familiar with what an M&E framework is. Now, we will present the supply and demand side for M&E data. We will also focus at the service standards, performance management, and accountability measures that can be put in place. Now, let us start with the supply and demand for M&E data. The supply side refers to the ability of the system to provide reliable, quality information in a timely fashion. The demand side refers to the actual demand for and use of M&E information to support core program and government activities at all levels. Indicators. Indicators can be classified into two categories. Firstly, those focusing on program operations, that is management or operational indicators that could be used by managers at all levels to assess the overall functioning of the policy or program. And secondly, those focusing on results, that is analysis or results indicators used by high-level managers to measure progress against outcomes and for external actors. Indicators must be agreed upon, prioritized, and refined as a result of participatory and iterative process that accounts for the information needs of stakeholders at all levels. Indicators must reflect the program's objectives, theory of change, logical framework, and measuring input, output, outcome, and impact. Indicators must reflect the program's core business processes. Indicators should also be prioritized, refined, and organized as an iterative process. That is, an extensive mapping of information needs can lead to a number of indicators that is extremely large and unmanageable. This includes prioritizing indicators based on a realistic assessment of their feasibility and usefulness, for instance, during participatory workshops with all key stakeholders. Refining each indicator to make sure it fulfills the CREAM criteria and can be effectively calculated. CREAM is the acronym of clear, relevant, economic, adequate, and monitorable. This involves mapping each indicator back to its constituting formula, that is numerator and denominator, and potential data source, as well as defining how often that indicator will be collected and by whom. Now, let us look at the main data sources. The first one we're going to look at is the management information system. And in terms of advantages, the MIS has a big sample, and secondly, it's readily available. In terms of disadvantages, the MIS can't be used to do impact analysis. The second major data source is the administrative records. The advantage of administrative records is that they are readily available, and the weakness is that they can be influenced by anecdotes. The third major data source are official records. The advantage of official records is that there is a lot of information. The disadvantage is that they are not representative at lower administrative levels. The fourth major data source are qualitative studies, and the advantage is that they are low cost. But the disadvantage is that they usually cover a very small sample. The fifth major data source are external evaluations. The advantage is that they are able to provide impact information. The disadvantage is that they are high cost. For now, let me turn my attention to the demand side of M&E. Let me pose a question by asking to say, why might institutions and staff oppose it? What do the staff decision makers and public, who are often represented by the media, social partners, and other interest organizations, really want to know. The first reason why information might not be used is that information is not packaged in useful manner. For instance, disseminating a highly technical report to a non-technical audience. A report should be distilled to suit a given audience. Secondly, information is not widely accessible. It should be published on a website or a portal, for example. Thirdly, there are no incentives for the policymakers to use the data. M&E cannot be divorced from the political realm because M&E gives legitimacy or delegitimizes projects which in themselves are creation of political processes. On the demand side, use of M&E data will be enhanced when, at the macro level, the national policy environment should be enabling. This means that it is performance-oriented and with a strong focus on standard assessment procedures. Secondly, it offers an overall institutional culture that fosters linkages between different ministries and has actors focused on planning and allows for donors and civil society to play an active role in fostering M&E practice. At the meso level, the implementing agencies must have a sufficient level of autonomy in decision-making to ensure M&E activities are perceived as useful and not frustrating. At the micro level, individuals responsible for M&E must understand its potential usefulness. They should not fear M&E as a controlling function and should have sufficient capacity and training to perform their duties. To achieve this, managers need to shift the focus of M&E from controlling and blaming to learning. Now we are going to focus our attention on service standards. Service standards are a set of delivery targets and set of commitments made by the service providers. They allow the end users to know what kind of service to expect. Service standards must guarantee 1. Privacy, dignity, and confidentiality. Beneficiaries should be treated with respect at all times. For instance, their individual information is not publicized without their authority. Secondly, accessibility. Our beneficiaries must be able to physically access the services. For instance, the distance should not be too far. There must be accommodation for persons with disabilities, for instance, braille for the blind and ramps for wheelchair users. Thirdly, cultural awareness. Services are sensitive to the cultural values. For instance, in many African countries, it's not appropriate to call the senior citizens by their first names. Service standards imply linking them to the strategic plans and performance management. We want goals to be met in an effective manner. Besides service standards, there are other internal and external measures that help improve overall accountability of service provision in social protection sector. However, it should be clear that these accountability measures must be implemented in conjunction with a strong M&E system. Some of the other accountability measures that can be put in place, as you can see: internal measures, spot checks, supervisions, and inspections. External measures, tribunals, courts, and ombudsmen. Financial audits, social audits, integrity frameworks, and anti-fraud campaigns. Scrutiny by Parliament and committees at various levels, NGOs and media. You can find more information on the content of this session in the material made available in this module. Well, that's it for now. I hope these inputs may be useful for you to follow this module's content. Enjoy the activities ahead.